I'm John Batchelor. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents. Iran, Malcolm. We had a good conversation with Amir Taheri, who's a deeply well-informed man about the history of Iran compared to the history of the Twelvers, this coup that took place in 1979 when Khomeiniist revolution, invented by the old man from Paris in his bitterness and his self-delusion, came back and imposed upon the people of Persia, Iran, a regime written in a theocratic nightmare. It doesn't actually have merit as a religious organization in Iran. It's nowhere near dominance. It's a cult of a cult. I can't come up with an interpretation in America that would be better than just saying this is if people who worship the devil in America took over the government. That's how bizarre it is compared to the people of Persia. It's a self-destructive, delusional death cult. That's what's in charge in Tehran. And yet that group, Ahmadinejad, the supreme leader, and the Mahdists at Qum, and their IRGC masters have now sadistically put this nation of 40 million people and more in a prison. And we do not have a way of helping them other than military confrontation, as I understand it. The President of the United States, however, is a player here if he wants to be, speaking out clearly against Ahmadinejad, the supreme leader, the IRGC. He does not. Do we understand what holds the president back? Do we, after 2 years now since the June 2009 revolution, when he held back then, why does he continue to hold back and not say Ahmadinejad is a sadistic brute and he must go?
I think the president had the theme of Iran implicit in a lot of what he was saying, acknowledging it. But I think Netanyahu put down the marker about having to say and make clear that all options are on the table, but it has to be done in a convincing way. You know, during the course of the past couple of weeks, because everybody was preoccupied with Tunisia, Egypt, etc., we have not followed what's really going on the ground. Ahmadinejad went to visit one of the major oil refineries. They blew it up right before he arrived there. Right. We know that the sites, the Bushehr went online, and he's supposed to be visiting, going there for the inauguration. That's the nuclear reactor that Russia supplied. But the Natanz reactor, which was taken down by the Stuxnet worm and computer worm, is back online and supposedly now producing low-enriched uranium at a slower rate, but still operational. And the IEA came out with some astounding new reports again, and suggesting that these are military nuclear sites. They found the triggers, which can only be used for nuclear weapons. They have much more evidence constantly coming out. It gets no attention.
The IAEA is the supervising body of the United Nations Security Council to verify the non-proliferation treaty signed by Iran, and is the centerpiece of the inspection regime that Iran blocks consistently, and that is the source of the sanctions by the United Nations Security Council. Please continue.
And surprise, surprise, they also said they finally confirmed that the Syrian site taken out by Israel was in fact a nuclear reactor, right, and preparing for nuclear weapons. And had they listened to the show, they could have found it out a long time ago. They didn't have to wait this long.
We did have this matter with Mohammed el-Baradei.
A few years, yes.
The stooge of the Tehran regime, who now sits in Egypt worrying about the fate of his brethren in Cairo. Yes.
And on top of that, we have the human rights things where the reports are coming out now about the hundreds and hundreds of executions, public executions taking place all over Iran now. They acknowledge, the public, the Iranian media is saying 179. The other sources are telling us the number is a multiple of that. And yet we don't see the outrage, and that sends a message. We know that the key issue for many of the Arab countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the Gulf, many of our allies, King Abdullah referred to the common enemy, and he means it with Israel, and that is Iran, that the Arab states face. And the failure to send that message, a convincing message that we're prepared to do what's necessary. America has added new sanctions, and we should congratulate them on it. They are way ahead of the Europeans. He's trying to push the Europeans into new sanctions regime. They agreed to some this week. But the message was, if you don't have a credible military threat on the table, then you're only inviting the necessity to use it.
Earlier this evening, when we talked to Amir Taheri, I raised the issue of the rumor of the Ahmadinejad saying a covert reappearance, a covert emergence of the 12th Imam, a child who disappeared more than 1,000 years ago, and is, as it expected, so say the Twelvers, to emerge from a well and be met by Jesus, who is the Christ, on a white horse, and they will ride to collect the faithful, and the rest of us will either disappear or convert. That is a Twelver fantasy. That's the delusion. However, the covert emergence, I like this, the covert emergence says that that event will wait while Ahmadinejad and the 36 Supreme Boy Scouts who know about this will communicate with the Mahdi. I asked Amir Tahari, does this mean, can we interpret this as a form of a narrative that creates the ability to run a coup against the supreme leader? He did not say no. He did not say yes. He did not say no. He said that's in the balance. Malcolm, what we have right now is that the IRGC, and Ahmadinejad is their master, is a military dictatorship. That military dictatorship will not listen to sanctions. That military dictatorship will not listen to the Persian people. That military dictatorship will launch predatory strikes against its neighbors in order to enhance its power. That's what Saudi Arabia fears. That's what the Gulf fears. That's what Iraq fears. That's what all the neighbors fear.
And they fear because Ahmadinejad has told us what his intentions are very clearly.
Very clearly.
And the hidden imam, who needs an apocalyptic event in order to come back, that means that's why when he says he's ready to destroy half of Iran, he means it. He understands what's at stake. His adventurism is continuing. We discussed earlier about the role in South America, the role around the world, in Africa, in Yemen, in each of the countries, certainly Bahrain, and the unwillingness to put the marker down. And when you ask administration and other officials about it, they say, yes, well, but there's always a hesitancy about it, rather than understanding from history that the only thing that we can do, the only way we can succeed in this is clear, decisive message, and the Arab world is looking for it. They fear this more than we do.
The president said 2 years ago that if you solve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you begin to solve the problems of the whole Middle East. Does he still believe that? And does Congress believe it?
No, Congress certainly does not believe it, and I think the president moved away from that. You know, it was a subject that he and I had that exchange on that became public, but it's clear from the events, and we saw all the things in the Arab Spring, that Israel was not a factor. Now we're seeing some more presence of demonstrations because either they're stimulated or whatever. But I think the president was somewhat more balanced, but still, by putting the Palestinian issue, Israeli issue in that first speech, he diminished, in fact, erased any discussion of the Arab Spring and America's position on it, leaving us then with the only one line coming out of that whole speech, dominating, and then saying on Sunday, I knew that would be the issue, and I knew that would create the controversy.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents. Thank you, Malcolm. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.